Good morning, everybody.
Yes, sir.
It's a short week this week.
Oh,
Are you excited?
I am over the moon. I am so happy.
Me too.
It's fantastic.
I do love this. I'm also getting the hang of being back on X. There's quite a lot that I'm still not used to. There's quite a lot that I'm kind of having to re-educate myself on. I almost feel like re-educate sounds like such a Maoist struggle session, brainwashing thing. But
like you were caught using the wrong pronoun or something.
Right. I'm figuring my way, and I'm also figuring my way through like what to say about the show now that we've got the real network on one side of things and the podcast party on the other, and we're kind of separating them as businesses, and they've got different roles to play and all the rest. But it is confusing, even to me.
Yeah. It's
like these are my children.
Yeah.
It's like when your kids walk into the room and you're like, are you, what's your name again?
Yeah. Number four, come here.
Now I know how parents feel when they kind of lose track of their kids. Jack Mutlands is here, everybody, in case you haven't noticed.
Yes, sir.
Big ass chain.
Yes, I am. It's for the swag.
It's ever since you started hanging with taxi buses.
Yeah. They put me on game. Weirdly enough, you know how a lot of people, there is a lot of violence in the taxi industry.
Violence. Taxi violence.
But because I'm their friend now, you know what I mean? I'm kind of the safest person.
You're in with them.
Yes,
they like you. Yeah, I've got you.
They're amazing human beings. I mean, the taxi industry is absolutely fascinating.
It is, and let me tell you something. There's some hardworking people in that business.
Yep.
And we may sit on the outside and criticize them, and sometimes it's merited and justified. But I'll tell you what, they keep the economy going.
Yeah.
You got to give credit where it's due. South Africans will complain about them, but they're the only people who let you in traffic. And they are busy getting everybody to work.
They are.
As we speak, from 3 a.m., they're busy ferrying South Africans around to all the important places where they need to be to get stuff done.
Yep. I leave my house on Tuesday mornings at 4.
Yes.
And there's a taxi there ready, waiting.
Ready to make stuff happen.
Yep. And for whatever reason, it's weird. Like during the day, that's when they have a bit of a foul attitude. But at 4 a.m, they're absolutely delightful. I don't know.
A foul attitude?
Yeah, they do. Sometimes. It happens. They're people
Who
too.
doesn't have a foul attitude by the end of a long day? Oh my God. Yesterday, I was here early in the morning. We did the show. I had some meetings. I had some stuff to do. Then I went off and I kind of had a gap in the middle of the day. And I had a 4, 5, and 6 o'clock in the afternoon meeting. So by the time I eventually got home yesterday, I was screwed. I was just thinking, this public holiday situation couldn't come at a better time for me.
Yeah.
I walked into my house last night and I was like, just get through tomorrow and Wednesday, and
you're done.
Thursday's a holiday.
Yeah.
You'll survive.
I imagine you're not the only person that feels that way. A lot of people have been waiting for a break.
Absolutely.
And truth be told, the past 2 weeks have been hectic on our end.
There's a lot going on. So thank you for your patience if you've been putting up with us and name changes and website changes and app changes. And I mean, yesterday we were fiddling around with the app and trying to get something started because it wasn't working properly in the morning. But it all will be revealed. And I mean, I'm trying to make it as simple as possible because actually, if you like this show and you're coming just for this show, nothing's changed.
Yeah.
It's exactly what you'd want it to be. If anything, there will be some positive and cosmetic changes in the next while. That doesn't mean I'm going for Botox. It means, we're trying to bring the show a little more visually up to date.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much what will happen here, but nothing else. You don't have to worry. Nothing else is going to change.
And I mean, Cliff Central was at the forefront of podcasting in this country, and
spot on. We just have to keep evolving.
Yeah, if anyone's going to lead the charge in evolving, I think it should be us.
Right,
makes sense.
And we're launching a bunch of other really cool things along the way too.
Yep.
And as for the podcast party, we had a hell of a week last week with the famous Douglas Murray.
What a man!
Yeah, I mean, listen, to just spend 10 minutes around a guy like that, you feel instantly like you are absorbing like a sponge because he's so clever.
Yeah, he did.
Like,
he is.
Don't you just get the impression immediately? Like there are definitely people who their brains just work differently to the rest of us.
Yeah, they do. And it actually makes you realize just how much more work you have to do. And it's an exciting thing to think about,
right.
truly, because it makes you realize that firstly, you shouldn't be married to your opinions about anything.
Yeah, you should be willing to change them on the basis of any new evidence coming into your world.
And you also realize that there's a whole world of knowledge out there that you might have overlooked because you were too busy looking at something else. And all you need to do is have a chat with that man for about 5 to 10 minutes, and
well,
you'll open up. I promise you'll open up.
Look, we've got a first attempt out here now with the podcast party for bringing out real thought leaders and real public thinkers. And we want to encourage more people in this country to start saying what's on their mind, to think out loud, to critically analyze the things that they regard as being true and important, figure out whether they really are. Because we are a young nation that is still coming to grips with a lot of what democracy, what representation, what elections, what the future of this country politically might look like. And as a result, it's incumbent on all of us, and particularly on people who are young and who are trying to figure out what the future might look like and trying to decide how they would like to represent themselves in that future. It's important for them to wrestle with ideas.
Because as we all know, if you don't study history, you're just bound to make the same mistakes. And I think we also need to start adopting the idea of failing forward. This country fails back a bit too much. A bit too much. And the best way to go about doing that, I think, you mentioned it earlier on, is critical thinking. Being able to sit in a room with people that don't necessarily share your opinions, but you're willing to engage in the conversation because you realize that there might be something to learn.
And it doesn't have to be hard work. It can be so much fun.
Yeah.
The real beauty of having not necessarily complicated and painful discussions, but truly thoughtful, interesting, novel conversations about things that you're learning almost every sentence of that conversation. Someone is learning from the other.
Mm-hmm.
I think that those are the most stimulating possible occasions for you.
Yeah.
What are you going to learn from going over old territory and establishing your point of view with people who already know it? There's no interest there. So the point is, and I'm sorry, there's a long-winded way to get to it. We're going to be bringing a lot of other people from all over the world to South Africa so that they can contribute to our thinking and improve the way that we come to grips with things.
Yep.
And we're going to take some of the best of South Africa international. That is part of what we're doing with the podcast party. You can follow us on all the social media, and you will see that just yesterday we were getting quite a lot of attention. Douglas Murray put out the interview that I did with him. And Dave Rubin, who's also a friend who's doing incredible work. He's been a broadcaster and an influencer, and I don't mean that in a negative sense, because there's so many people who call themselves influencers.
Yeah,
but Dave Rubin really has influenced people's opinions online for some time.
Because his interactions are not on social media.
Yeah, correct.
He's not an Instagram.
No, he's doing really, really impressive stuff. And Dave Rubin was one of the first people to launch a free speech platform. He very much said that he grew up, in the kind of Hollywood leftist way of thinking, and he's changed his position on a number of things. And now you could consider him a bit of a contrarian. So go and take a look at what Dave Rubin said. He mentioned the interview that we did with Douglas Murray as part of his show that he did yesterday, which is cool because it means that, we're getting out there.
Yeah.
And we're reaching new audiences and bringing in new people. So I'm thrilled about that. And you can find out more just by following Podcast Party and by keeping it real here on the Real Network, where we do this show every Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday.
Yeah.
Cool. Congo Chris says, quite right, Congo. He says, the serious conversations are great, but just don't lose the fart gags.
Yeah, we can't lose that.
You will recall, Congo Chris, on this very show last week with Jack, we played the sound of a red hot ball of iron going into a jar of, like, what is it? Petroleum jelly or something.
Yeah.
Going as it went in. There will always be room for fart jokes.
Always.
We shall never surrender the fart jokes.
I actually hope I never become so cynical that farting is not funny anymore. I hope I never cross that line.
I'm with you.
Oh my God. Can you imagine? Like just getting mad. Why would you do that?
There are people who just don't find it funny.
They really are. And it's like with all of the shit that happens in the world, you have to find a little ray of sunlight.
And something to just take less seriously than all this stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on with me because I parked my car yesterday. There was some rain last night or something, so it's washed most of it off. But the birds have decided when I park here at the office, fair game on my car. And it seems to me like, because I don't think about where I park usually. I don't consider that there are swarms of hardy-dars nesting in a tree. And these things have been dropping like kilograms of bird shit onto my car. And apparently, and we've discussed this on the show once before, a couple of years ago, that stuff is very dangerous for the paintwork on your car.
Yeah, it is.
Some of it you can't get rid of easily. So I got to it this morning, and thank God it looked better than last night because there was some rain overnight. But there's still like crusty bits, and I don't know what these things are eating. They're eating, I don't know, chemicals from some factory.
Whatever the hell it is.
It looks terrible.
It's absolutely terrible. In fact, horrible. Like the having trees is always a good thing, but like the number of trees that are here are just home to a whole host of birds that do not give a damn about how you feel. It's like, oh, you took your cat to the car wash yesterday. let's see. It's like it's like they have a chat amongst themselves. Hey, do you want to play target practice?
No.
That white card looks pretty cool.
And it's white, so it doesn't help. Slippery Pickle says it's corrosive. Yes, that is true. It is. I'm telling you, that stuff will eat the paint off your car.
Yes, it will.
If you're one of those people who you like neatness, I was saying to Jack and to James, who's busy, I noticed that James and I hear Simpiwe is actually responsible for having tidied up the production office because it looked like a dog's breakfast.
Yeah, it was
for the longest time. It's horrific. There was just cables everywhere and like computers that were switched off and on, and there's just stuff everywhere.
Yeah.
I think while Ryan was in charge of that office, it was a disaster. Not to badmouth Ryan now that he's in Ireland, but I mean, he's still drunk from St. Patrick's Day, so it wouldn't make a difference.
It wouldn't.
But they tidied it up. And similarly, there are people who keep their cars immaculately clean. I really do try it. The outside, I obviously can't do anything with these birds. The inside of the car, I like to keep clean.
Yeah.
But man, you look inside some people's cars. You know, if you park next to someone at a shop or at an office park when you're going in for a meeting, and you just get out of your door and you're like, whoa!
It's like, what exploded in there?
There are fast food packets everywhere.
Oh my goodness!
Tissues, open boxes. It's like, what are these people doing? Are they living in their cars?
It's crazy. And I look, I might get a lot of flack for this, but like women keep the most disorganized cars.
Ooh, here we
on
go.
Earth.
You said women. Now,
yes.
Now you know what's going to happen, right? Oh, I saw this thing. Just let me read this to you. This is so on the nose for what you're saying now.
Seriously, like it's
just
almost...
be careful because you know what's going to happen. And you don't have a go at women. Who do you think you are? So here, this is funny as hell. Someone posted this to me, and I don't know. I don't know if I should repost it because then a lot of people not going to get it. So, this guy says the average height for women is 5'4".
Okay.
And some woman goes, "Yeah, but I'm 5'8" though." He goes, "This is all arguments with women."
Yeah.
And then after posting it, the first woman to comment goes, I'm a woman and I don't do this though.
Wow.
So, ladies, I am not looking for a fight here. But when a guy says the average blah, blah, blah for women, that doesn't mean you have to say how you're not the average.
Yeah.
And that isn't an argument. That the average still stands.
Do they know what the word average means?
Don't say they, because these women are going to get upset with you.
You know what? I actually feel like being roasted today. So let them.
Have you
please.
Have you ever sat with, let's say it's a woman you really like. You are prejudiced in her favor.
Right.
And you say something like, oh, you know, there are a lot of people don't like reading fiction. And she goes, I like reading fiction, though. You're like, we weren't talking about that. I thought it might be an interesting conversation to talk about, you know, what people read, not what you read and how you break the rule.
Yeah. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've gotten into trouble with a girl that I was dating, and I'll text like, you know what? I'm just not in the mood for anyone. And then she hears, I'm not in the mood for you.
It immediately becomes a me.
Yeah.
Me.
And I mean, look.
And guys also, listen, guys are the same in a lot of conversations. They will also make it me.
Yeah. And we're, you know, on average, there's that word again. Men are typically a lot sillier than women. You know what I mean? And I think we find it a lot easier to laugh at ourselves and one another. It's how we.
I think it's also because guys just don't. If guys are talking to guys, they don't tolerate sensitivity as much.
Yeah, no.
So if a guy says, "Oh, you know, I was driving the other day and a taxi driver, blah blah blah," a guy's not immediately going to go, "Oh, that never happens to me because."
Yeah.
A guy's going to go, "You idiot."
Yes.
Therefore, men have an inbuilt defense mechanism during conversation. Because they know the other guys are going to take the piss out of them.
Yeah.
Whereas women are expecting a warm reception and are horrified when they don't get it.
Yeah. But I mean, even the studies that they've done on kids and whatnot and how girls and boys play, our rules are completely different. Like, we just go about life differently.
And by the way, if in case there's a woman somewhere who's upset, I could see Leanne isn't. She says, Jack, but I am silly and I'm a woman, you see.
Congratulations.
Yeah, but you're making the same point as we are. And I know you're being sarcastic, Leanne. I get you. But
yeah.
I mean, Congo Chris says, the average woman will say, but not me, even though the statement does apply. They communicate feelings, not facts. And everything becomes personal as opposed to general. That's why terms like, and I hate to bring this up because it's such a sensitive thing for so many people, but terms like lived experience are massively important to women and not important at all to men.
Not that much, no.
Guys will look at statistics and they'll be totally unemotional about them.
Yeah.
Oh, 20% of people want to vote for
UDM.
They're like, okay, that's interesting. With women, it's like, yeah, but I wouldn't.
Okay.
And I'm not saying all women don't get upset with us, but that's what happens a lot of the time.
It does. But listen, we love you nonetheless. We love you because
we wouldn't
you
want
are that way.
We wouldn't want it any other way.
No other way.
And this is part of the reason that we're intrigued with each other, men and women, is because there's this difference.
Yeah.
Anyway,
but don't let these LGBTQI people
let's not bring them into this. They didn't ask for a fight with you.
Okay,
they didn't look for a fight with you this morning. As my producer Thabo Mondisani used to say, don't fight with me. I'm not fighting with you.
Yeah.
So there are some interesting comments here about people and the dirty state of their cars. So a huge reaction says, I judge people by the state of their car, not the model, more the cleanliness. Have some self-respect, man. Well, this is a good point because it isn't like the people who drive the expensive cars keep them clean. Sometimes the people in the very expensive cars, these 2-3 million rand cars, you look inside and it does look like someone had a fight in there.
Yep.
And then you drive past someone who's got a cheap little car, but it is immaculately clean. And you're like, well, I can respect that.
Yeah.
Right. So actually, people with kids have dirty car interiors, says Mapelo. That is, listen, having seen the state of my brother and my sister-in-law's cars, especially when their kids were little, like toddler, little, Yeah, it's totally true. That is absolutely
It's
true.
par for the course.
And you can't blame the parents, because no matter how good they are at disciplining their kids spill shit in the car.
Yep.
Kids leave stuff lying in the car. They forget things in the car. Kids have no respect for their environment. Even if you beat them, they will still treat the thing like, rubbish.
Yeah, I mean, the kids don't understand how things come into life, essentially. So they don't know what work means. They don't know why you should keep certain things. But I mean,
no understanding.
Yeah, but they're kids. It's okay.
Just Milan says, I get that same edgy feeling when take-a-lot drivers come past with a small hatchback filled with boxes. I saw this yesterday. There was a delivery being made at the gate of an office park, and the back of this guy's little like Toyota Taz was piled to the roof.
Yeah,
with boxes. I don't know. He couldn't see out of the back window. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But this guy was working, which I respect.
Yeah.
But you could just see like there's a lot of crap in that car.
Yeah, there is.
And I wonder how many of those boxes get lost along the way. That's all I'm saying.
Yep.
Jack sounds so cool, but then you switch the video and it's apparent that he's a turbo nerd. I know because I'm one. I think he's complimenting you.
It sounds like a compliment.
Yeah, Carl. Thank you, Carl.
As I quietly Google what turbo nerd means.
It doesn't mean you're stupid, which is a
Definitely
compliment.
Not. Yeah.
A dirty inside of a car is a disorganized person and they will be untidy. Okay, I think that's about right, Francis. Again, you're allowed to judge. You're allowed to judge people by the environment that they create for themselves.
Yeah.
Which is again why the saying cleanliness is next to godliness.
Yep.
That's where it comes from.
And then you find people saying things like, no, it's just organized chaos. You're like, sorry.
No, I'm afraid I cannot share a space with a disorganized, untidy. No, let's not say that it's grubby. Let's not say it's like a messy leave food containers lying around, or that it's sticky surfaces, or it's not a person who is
filthy.
It's a person who's just disordered.
Yeah,
they have piles of stuff all over the place, and I can't do that. You can have, for example, I will have a pile of books, but they will be neatly stacked, and I'll know that this pile is for reading, this pile is for putting away, this pile is to be decided, for example.
Yeah,
and there will be a system. If you throw me into a room where everything is just all over the place, and you say to me you have to be here for a day or two, it will be sorted out by the time you come back.
Yeah,
even if you come back in an hour, I will have everything organized.
Yeah.
It might not be organized the way that you would want it. And this is where people who are disordered
will show up and like, why would you put it there?
No, I have a system, they say. I always say to you, I have a system. I know where everything is.
Yeah.
No, you don't. You are muddling your way through this, and you will spend a lot of your time trying to figure out what's going on around you. Whereas I will know if I go to the file and I go to B, I will find the bond for the house. You will not.
Yeah.
You have a stack of papers, and you will go through those papers for
like,
6 hours trying to find the thing. Don't tell me you're organized.
And more often than not, you're going to stumble across something that you, in the moment, find interesting, and you get distracted for a good 15 minutes and then go back to what you were looking for originally.
You can ask anyone in this office if I have a document and they ask for it, they will be able to get it from me almost instantly.
Yeah.
I will have it ready. There are very few occasions, it's like when your email goes down or something like that, where I don't have the thing you ask for.
Yeah.
And if anybody has any evidence to the contrary, bring it. I am pretty sure of my record in this respect.
Someone please bring it.
Slippery Pickle says people who throw trash out of the window have clean cars. At least when I see someone with trash in the car, I know they're not throwing it in the gutter. That's a good point, but then they must also, when they get home,
take it out of the car and put it in the trash can.
Take one of those black rubbish bags and just throw this shit in there.
Yeah, I mean,
how nice it is to get into a car that isn't piled window high with rubbish.
Just stepping into clean places, period, is just amazing. Like, I get a lot of anxiety when like my room is a complete and utter mess. And I'm not gonna sit here and say that it never gets into a mess. Sometimes the world can be a bit crazy and I get a little distracted. But when I walk in and I realize, oh my God, everything's up in the air, I immediately start packing up. Like I can't do it. Even with my outfits. I would much rather have something laid out the night before. That way I don't have to waste time in the morning trying to fiddle through my stuff, trying to figure out what to wear. It just saves me a whole lot of time.
I usually put it out the night before.
Yep.
Unless I mean, there's, sometimes you get distracted and you have too much to do.
True.
But usually the night before. Mapelo says people with dirty work computers with a sticky keyboard and mouse. Okay, that is just... And people, because everybody uses laptops now.
Yeah.
Because, most people are working on laptops. They're not working on desktop computers. I mean, it's not the rule, but there's a lot more
laptops around.
In corporate South Africa, people have a laptop.
Mm-hmm.
And then they have the screen full of the fingerprints.
Wait.
I don't know. I just have to clean the thing.
Yeah. Whether
it's at home or at the office, I've got a little spray and a little cloth.
Mm-hmm.
And I clean the stuff. So much so that I now clean other people's laptops in the office.
You're starting to sound like a germaphobe.
Listen, you don't want to go and don't dig too deep here. You'll be disappointed. Gareth, you must be an auditor's dream. I have very good filing. I will, I might have a terrible personality. I might be difficult to get along with. I might be sometimes a little bit ornery, but I have good filing.
Okay.
That should make up for it. Fire Monkey says, when I was studying, I remember observing women students that had clean cars in general would have messier rooms. Those that had cleaner rooms would have messier cars. Do you think there's a correlation, or is that just Fire Monkey's observation?
I think there could be something there, but I think I'll take it a step further. I think women that have messy handbags have messy cars. Like if you've ever had the opportunity to look in a woman's handbag and things are all over the place, I'm willing to bet my last rand that her car looks exactly the same.
That's so bad.
How is it bad?
No. Why it's bad is because we're opening up such a can of worms here. Women and handbags. That's some people are so sensitive about this.
Yeah.
I know ladies who just will not let anyone look in their handbag because they just know there's a mess.
Yeah.
And they're slightly embarrassed about it, but they're the only ones who dig around in there. And also, there's some women, the handbag's only this big. It's as big as like one of those little fanny pack things. That a lot of overweight people wear when they go to a flea market.
Yeah.
That's the way I can put it. So a handbag that big. But they contain it's like
everything.
Mary Poppins. You reach into that bag and pull out a ladder.
It's crazy. It's like Inspector Gadget in a bag.
Right. And then they rummage. I just have to get something out of my bag. I'm just getting my lipstick. They'll go in there. They'll be elbow deep in the bag. It's a tiny little bag. They'll be rummaging around in there for like 5 minutes straight.
Yeah.
Trying to find this lipstick that they went in for.
Yeah.
And they'll be unpacking, and there's a pile of stuff on the table. This big, how do you get all of that into the bag?
Yeah, and then whenever they rummage through it, you hear these weird sounds as well, it's like crinkling and popping and all of this stuff. You're like, oh my God, I do not want to see what's in their bag. It's absolutely insane. And some of the things that women pull out of their handbags is absolutely like it's unbelievable. There was this one occasion, my friends and I were at Opikopi, and while we were there, a friend of mine has got a problem with sinuses. And as you know, at Opikopi, like there's dust all over the place.
What a horrible place to have that problem.
And from nowhere, this woman just showed up like Superwoman. Like she pulled out a
whole pharmacy in there.
An entire pharmacy. Like, okay, this is for pain. This is for your nose. This is for this. If your eyes start watering, here's some eye drops. I'm like, oh my God.
Right.
Excuse me, Clicks. What's going on? Like, I don't know if Opikopi was sponsored by Clicks. Who is this woman?
Great. That is so great.
Insane. It is insane.
Listen, I'm not going to criticize all women. Some women are so unbelievable that they can pull out like antihistamines and headache tablets, stomach stuff, and like anything you need is in there.
Yep.
And I understand, and someone in the comments said this, you mustn't give women a hard time about handbags because they're not allowed to have pockets by order of the fashion police. It's Congo Chris. That's a very good point.
That is a good point.
Good point. So the handbag, I mean, it is an incredible thing. People wondered for years what the Queen used to have in her handbag because she'd always carry the handbag around, but she doesn't have money because she doesn't need money.
Mm-hmm.
You were wondering what was in there. Maybe tissues, makeup. Who knows? But it turns out that some women have screwdrivers, spanners, hammers and nails.
Yep.
There's a whole room of stuff in there. You could go in there and you'd disappear for a month. And
crazy.
You'd be able to come out with whatever you're looking for.
Crazy.
Unbelievable. Hand sanitizer still a good idea according to Durban Dope.
Mm-hmm.
Very good.
Mm-hmm.
People are gross, says B. I used to have to move my friend's car, bottles and tissues for days, and a cereal bowl, still with milk and bits of food. I was shook. That is disgusting.
That is actually disgusting.
Yeah.
It's pretty disgusting.
Vuisego says, do women have messy handbags? Is that a thing? You are very observant, bro.
But listen.
I think the question is for you because you were saying that some.
Listen, there are far more women than men in my family. Okay.
Right.
And on multiple occasions, I've been sent, yo, please go grab this from inside my bag. And I get there and I just grab the bag and give it to her. Like, I am not going in there.
No. But it's very rude. You should never dig in any woman's handbag.
Not at all. Not at all. Even like, unless you have been given the express instruction to go jump in there. But just generally, like you, and these women, honestly speaking, like you'll come across one of these bags and someone will ask you, please hand me my bag. And you lift it and you're like, you've been carrying this 5 kilogram stone everywhere. Like, what is inside this bag?
I don't even know how we got onto this because we've now opened a hornet's nest of stuff here. but this is an interesting point. Sianda says, I once came across a rotting apple core while looking for change in my sister's handbag.
Oh my goodness.
Some horror stories here.
Yeah.
I have a light in my bag to help me find stuff. Wendy even has a torch.
Yep.
Conrad says it's a sign of a disciplined individual and a good upbringing. I was in boarding school and the army. I was fortunate enough to have it drilled into me.
Well, yes, sir.
Good for you, Conrad. You know what? You're our type of guy.
Yeah.
Lucky says dildos are always in the bag. Really? Really? They have to take those to the office? I don't think so.
I think
not always.
Lucky's letting his imagination run wild at this
Lucky's
point.
Clearly never been in that many handbags.
Mm-hmm. Lucky, I feel like you just exposed something that you shouldn't have.
Anna Marie says, husbands complain the wife's handbag is so big until they have a headache and they need a grandpa.
True.
Then they're grateful.
Yeah.
Polyfiller has a tape measure.
Ooh.
Polyfiller. I like that. It's a good name. Has a tape measure in the handbag.
Mm.
My wife has my balls in her handbag, says Baka.
Ah.
Nice. Okay.
Well, hey, at least you know where they are.
And then we've got an important, serious question here from Christian, who has an interesting bit of info for us. Apparently, the ANC wants International Relations and Cooperation Minister Naledi Pandor to be the candidate for Western Cape Premier. Did you know this?
No, I did not.
That's interesting, Christian. Thank you for bringing us back to reality.
Yeah.
Out of the handbag into the fire.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know this. I wonder if that would be a good or a bad thing. I suppose the thinking there is, because she's been so vocal in the last couple of months about Palestine, that she would curry favor with the Muslim voters in the Western Cape. You know, again, you can always figure out, like, the ANC is not a complicated thing.
No.
You've got quite a lot of very, very basic thinkers in that party.
Mm-hmm.
So they put two and two together, like, there are a lot of colored Muslim voters in the Western Cape. And because they're obsessed with demography, because they still, so many of them are like, apartheid is like the biggest influence on their whole way of understanding the world.
Yeah.
Which would make Vut very proud and makes me a little bit sad for them.
True.
But they would immediately go, well, the demographics are colored Western Cape Muslim, they would vote Naledi because she stood up for Palestine. And maybe they're right. Maybe they have a point. If people are that facile that would be the way that they would vote just because of one issue, you get single issue voters in the world.
The point is a little blunt, but it's a point nonetheless.
So if that's true, then that's the reason, clearly.
Yeah. And the whole 350 becoming 370.
Yeah, that's another big thing that they're doing is like, we'll throw in an extra 20 Rand. You know.
Meanwhile, the rest of us are going to have to put the bill for it, which is actually what pisses me off. I don't know. You know, sometimes when I hear some of these decisions that are brought forward by the ANC, I genuinely ask myself if the thought process was something that was it a back and forth? Was there a sounding board? Did anyone come up with counter ideas or whatnot? Because when they roll some of these things out and then you find out that it's going to cost an extra 2.2 billion to taxpayers, do they simply not care, or is it just, you know what, we'll get the votes?
I think it's so cynical. It's really just a ploy. And because the ANC looks down on poor people.
Yeah.
And on unemployed people and on people who don't have an education, because they do look down on them. That's why they treat them with such contempt, and their policies do no favors to those people. You can see that to them, cynical ploy for votes. Oof, we need some votes. Why don't we offer these already destitute people who are dependent on 350 Rand a month? Think about how bad that is.
Yeah, it's
in other words, these people's conditions are so bad that their life is only made better by 350 Rand a month. Most people, I don't know if we could survive 350 Rand a week, let alone a day. But the ANC goes, well, I know what we do with those people. If we throw in an extra 20 Rand, because they're so desperate, then they'll go, thank you, ANC.
These guys are doing the right thing.
That is the level of cynicism that we're dealing with. And you know what? Again, just like with the Naledi in the Western Cape thing, they may be right. They may be people so down and out that their entire thought process could be shifted by 20 Rand.
I think
it's no different to offering people a food package or a T-shirt, which we know is a big thing in this country. You do that, and you could sometimes win that person for the next 4 or 5 years.
And I think there's a bit of hero worshipping in there as well. A lot of our parents who felt the brunt of apartheid realized that in 1994, Nelson Mandela was the person that was going to usher in this new world that a lot of people hadn't seen before. And that's what a lot of us were raised on. So the ANC at this point in time is on a pedestal that I'm not sure too many people want to take it off of, no matter how real the consequences of their actions might be. And it's become so simplistic in a lot of people's minds. Like, look, we are not going to vote for anything else other than the ANC because they brought us out of apartheid. They gave us freedom. I mean, we got to see the World Cup in our country and all of these things. You know what I mean? And it's very difficult to, they've got this demigod status in a lot of people's minds. And to remove the ANC from that demigod level in a lot of people's minds is not something that's going to happen. They're just not going to budge. I was actually thinking about it yesterday, and it scared the living shit out of me because there's a real possibility, even though the polls might say whatever.
Which polls, yeah.
You know, there is a real, genuine possibility that the ANC will at least get 50% of the vote.
It could happen again.
It genuinely could happen again.
Well, I just want to say to everybody who's new to the show this morning, everybody who's joining us for the first time, like and subscribe, and I can promise you there'll be a whole lot more of this. You can also tell us what is interesting to you, what you want us to talk about, who you want us to get on the show. We want to hear from you, so you can definitely do that. Just go and if you're watching us on YouTube for the first time today, then like and subscribe. Add your voice to the many thousands of South Africans who get to speak freely on this platform. get to be a part of the conversation. We will get to JJ Cornish in a little bit. Something we do every second Tuesday is Africanalysis. We get to tap into JJ's very wide-ranging experience on the continent.
Yeah.
He's been to a majority of African countries, and certainly a couple that I will never go to and that I've never even thought about going to before. I mean, I'm fascinated by some of the places on this continent. He knows a hell of a lot about it, and we check in with him every 2 weeks, courtesy of the Johannesburg Business School, who, of course, are doing amazing things to get Africa moving forward and to help many graduates to take their place in the business world in Africa. And there's so much here on this continent that we can do. So let's not always focus on the politicians. Let's also focus on the business people and those people who are learning more every day about the continent and figuring out ways to make it a better place.
Yep.
We'll get to that in just a short while. I do have to throw this in quickly because we won't get to it now, but we may get to it just after, is this Dr. Nandi being beaten up in the Kroonstad Correctional Center. Did you see the story?
Yes, I did.
What do you, any top of mind comments there with Dr. Nandipa? Because everybody was talking about how the Thabo Bester Dr. Nandipa case against Showmax to try and stop the story coming out. The documentary.
Yeah.
That failed horribly.
Yeah. Much to the delight of millions of South Africans, by the way.
Well, because people care about the story.
Yeah.
So when you heard that she was being beaten up in jail, what did you think?
Well, I thought the locale was perfect, right? Like, if you're going to get your ass whipped, behind bars kind of sounds like the best place to do it, right? But at the same time, it's, in my mind, it's like, okay, there's a lot of people that are behind bars. A lot of people get beaten, raped, and all of this stuff. But because her story was headline news, now we have to hear about it. And on some level, there's a lot of people that feel a lot of sympathy towards her. Like, oh my God, that shouldn't have happened. It also, I am also keeping in mind the fact that she is a very beautiful woman. She's a very attractive young lady. And not too many people want to see attractive people get beat.
But if she was ugly, we wouldn't really even.
No one would really care.
No, sadly.
Like, a lot of people you can't get any worse. Like, you were born like that.
That is the truest thing. It's like if Oscar Pistorius had shot through the door and there was a very ugly woman on the other side.
Yeah.
Again, like
people would be like, ish.
I'm afraid that's just how it is.
Yeah, it is. And, you know,
we didn't make the rules.
No, pretty privilege is a real thing.
It's a real thing.
It's a very real thing. And
people care about Dr. Nandi being beaten up because she's.
Yeah, it's like, why would you beat such a pretty lady? It's like, well, she is in prison, guys. Like, let's not forget that.
It's a serious allegation, according to the Department of Correctional Services. They're saying it's just allegations at this time.
Oh, it's alleged.
They say an investigation is underway, but apparently the lawyer of Nandipa says that one of the attackers was a sangoma and the other was a mentally ill inmate.
Why do we care? Like, what does that have to do with anything?
I think it's interesting that a sangoma and a crazy person attacked Dr. Nandi. I do think that makes it a little more interesting.
Like, no. I genuinely don't care. It was just all over the news. There was no way I could, skip it. But like, I couldn't be bothered.
Moonchild says she was taken to the prison doctor, a real one, and they could find no injuries. It's a lot of bullshit. Well, who knows? Who knows?
I mean, Leah, on a human level, if she was beaten, I'm sorry. But like,
of course,
as far as
you don't want people listen, our prisons are horrible enough, even if you aren't beaten.
Right.
Food is terrible. Conditions are terrible. It's just like a big black hole. No one knows what happens in there. Once people go into that system, there's no guarantee that they'll even come out. If they do come out, they'll probably come out worse than they went in.
Yep.
It's horrible. I have seen the inside of prisons because we've done shows from there. It's a very, very scary place to go. I wouldn't wish that on anybody, but criminals have put themselves in there, had nothing to do with me. I'm not the one who decides how it should be. Yep. Obviously, I would prefer if our prisons were places where people could improve. They could come out on the other side and have learned something, have rehabilitated themselves, become an asset to society.
And be reintegrated without too many concerns about whether or not they're going to do something stupid.
But you know what? I'd like the economy to grow.
Yep.
I'd like to have a government that wasn't corrupt.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like unicorns. I'd like rainbows. I'd like pots of gold on every street corner.
Mm-hmm. But we live in the real world. See?
So, I mean, there's no guarantee any of this stuff. Let us turn our attention to Africanalysis now. This is an opportunity for us every couple of days that we get to check in with JJ Cornish. It is brought to you by the Johannesburg Business School, where we look at what's happening around the African continent. Here is none other than JJ Cornish. Good morning, sir. Are you back in South Africa?
Bonjour to you. I most certainly am. In fact, I'm in the Lowveld. I'm on the verge of the Kruger Park at a camp here. My daughter from Sweden is out with me, so we're showing them the bush. Well, showing my grandchildren the bush. We had a baboon walk into our house last night and attempt to get our food, which rather traumatized everybody. But
that's one of the things that could happen on this lovely continent of ours. We still live in proximity to the wild world. But you got back from Libya, where you were just a short. No, sorry, Algeria, where you were a short while ago, JJ. Apparently, you had a very interesting return flight from Algeria.
Well, it took forever. You know, they flew me over there to cover a summit meeting, business class and a direct flight, and then they cancelled the return flight. Sod's law, I suppose you call it. And that's not, I don't think I'm speaking Arabic when I say that. But anyway, they flew me via Istanbul. I mean, it's not a scary airport at all. I mean, it's an impressive airport, and the Turkish Airlines were very good too. So but it did take forever, 10-hour layover, and that can really drag out a little content.
It can. So JJ, let's look at what's going on in other news around the continent. First of all, Somalia, which we know is a haven for and a very big area of concern when it comes to piracy. It continues to be. We know that the Houthis have been a massive problem in the Yemeni area on the south of the Arabian Peninsula, which obviously is across the Gulf from Somalia. But Somalia has been a hotbed of this kind of thing for the longest time. And now apparently an Indian Navy ship has had to come in and rescue a ship that was pirated by the Somalians.
A couple of elements there. Of course, Somalia was the place for piracy. It did move across to the Gulf around Nigeria at one point, and it became even worse there. But so bad was Somalia that the NATO actually put naval forces in there to stop it. And there's been nothing really serious happening there since 2017. But then they took a MV Ruin, a motor ship the other day. In fact, back in December, and they've been holding that with its crew of 35. And the Indian Navy has stepped in and rescued the crew, of 17, 35 pirates who surrendered and have been held. Now, a Bangladeshi vessel, MV Abdullah, it was held last week. And these same Indians and some Europeans are saying, we'll rescue them for you. There's a crew there of 34. And the Bangladeshis are saying, no, you don't even think about it. We put the safety of the crew at priority here, and you're not going to do that. So we wait to see. But what's this going to mean? That does mean that the naval forces have been redeployed around the Red Sea to hit at the Houthis, and apparently some Americans took a huge number of armaments and missiles and things. They captured them yesterday, so they're making some progress there. But those Houthi rebels out of Yemen, they haven't managed to beat them into submission yet. So if you are planning to take the catamaran, and I'll lend it to you this weekend, don't go up that way to the Horn. Head the other way. Even, what the hell, go to the Antarctic, man.
All right, so not the best place to go for a holiday at the moment. Now, what about, we constantly have these hostile activities happening, governments overthrown and all kinds of other things. And the AU has been kind of lackluster in being able to stop military coups, presidents being displaced, armed conflicts where one person is put in top and the other is thrown out. Why is the AU taking a tougher stance now, and can we believe them?
Because for the very reason that this has become the sort of coup center of the world. They've had all the Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, Guinea, all of that in recent years. And the AU has done what it can, what any sort of multilateral organization can do. It red cards any unconstitutional change of government, and that member of the AU cannot participate in or cannot vote. And but that has upset many. For example, the regional group, ECOWAS, the Economic Community of West African States, when the coups happened in Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, they said, that's enough. We will step in militarily and make you restore constitutionality. And then somebody said, yeah, great idea. Have you thought who's actually going to pay for that? And they said, oh, look, we'll come back to you on this one. And then those three countries decided, well, if you're going to kick us out or sanction us, we're actually leaving. So, there's an absolute mishmash, a real mess in that part of the world. But the AU has now suddenly said, we're not putting up with military takeovers. Peace, democracy is absolutely essential for development. Now, as we look at the countries I've just mentioned, Niger has ended its military relationship with the US. Niger was a friendly country to the West, and now it's changed around. Burkina Faso, according to analysts, has become a sort of a test case or a laboratory for the Russians, and the Russians already have Wagner mercenaries in the Central African Republic, and they're starting to move them into Burkina Faso. So that's not a country that's coming round. But in every case, there's been the secessionists and there's been the jihadis, and they've not been able to control them. And certainly the French, when they try to run that part or to control that part of the world better, they brought the countries together to form an alliance. But they went over the top in the sense that they believed any problem involving jihadis had to be sorted out militarily. And you can't do that. Essentially, many of these young men become jihadis because there's just no work. There's nothing else to do to sustain them. So, it's very interesting. Interesting that the Niger thing happened shortly after a visit by the Assistant Secretary of State, Molly Ree, and General Michael Langley, who is the head of the AFRICOM, African Command in Africa, the US Africa Command in Africa. And they visited there thinking they could try to move Niger back into Ghana, and Niger said, well, I have nothing more to do with you, United States. So it really is a very, very troublesome, certainly for the West at this time.
Listening to JJ now, I actually start questioning the utility of the AU. Like, they don't have teeth. They can't actually put into action a lot of things that whatever resolutions they might come up with. But JJ, there's a very interesting story that we heard about, like WhatsApp and Malawi women being somehow the Malawi woman being saved using WhatsApp. That sounds so strange to me.
That was very interesting. But you're starting with me. And I see Gareth wouldn't even do it. I mean, hitting at my support for multilateral organizations. And since I was a correspondent to United Nations, I believe very firmly in them. I know that they're imperfect. I know that they lack teeth in many ways. But, the essential argument there is it is better to have them than not to have them. Not to have the African Union. What would you have in Africa? I certainly think there's many, many, many improvements. But the African Union, as compared to the Organization of African Unity, that club of presidents that never would criticize one another, it has improved. Lot of room for improvements. But to get back to Malawi, what an interesting story. This is in Oman. In this particular case, a number, something like 20 of them were rescued. But this particular woman ran a small business in Malawi, and they came to her and said, you can do a whole lot better if you become a taxi driver in Oman. You can do a whole lot better. why don't you come over? And of course, she grasped the opportunity, but she was made to become a maid, and she was working sometimes for 20 hours a day. And then her boss came along and started raping her. And I mean, she finally had no way out of this, and she just was absolutely desperate. She went onto Facebook, and believe it or not, a compatriot, a fellow Malawian living in New Hampshire in the United States, got onto the BBC, and the BBC in turn, they've got some muscle in this regard, and they came out and they've effectively rescued her and about 20 others. But what we're waiting for, Jack, what we're waiting for is some kind of retribution for the Omanis. I'd like to see prosecutions there, because we're hearing stories of this, and there are many countries. I do believe it's Ethiopia is one of them, saying you can't go and work in those countries. You're not allowed to work in the Arab countries. Say to their citizens, it's just too hazardous, and we can't rescue you all the time.
JJ, I mean, it's an interesting thing, and we're running out of time here, but it's worth remarking on the fact that there is more slavery going on today in the world than there was in the 1800s. And much of that is happening in the intersection of the Arab world and the African world. And it's something that's very uncomfortable for all these multilateral organizations to deal with, because it requires arguments over sovereignty, over what happens to citizens of other countries once they are found in countries that are not the ones that they come from. And we know that there are parts of the world like Oman where, you could basically be put into slavery, sex slavery, or worse things, and if there is something worse, but otherwise the kind of forced indentured labor that we would have expected to be a part of our history. How much of this have you encountered, especially because you've just been to North Africa?
Well, I mean, I haven't seen the awful side of it, because you wouldn't be. These are people locked away. But I know when I went to Kuwait, and I went out for a walk, and please excuse me, I went out for a walk, and there were just thousands of people around. It was a Sunday evening. And these were thousands of, again, Ethiopians and people from the continent, some from Sri Lanka, India, and so on, all working there, doing all the jobs. Now, of course, if you live in Kuwait, you don't do any work at all. As you attain adulthood, they give you a home. If you get married, you get further rewarded. For every child, you get rewarded. And then you do the labor that you don't mind doing, because people do the menial work. But there are thousands upon thousands of them doing that. And, I went to speak to some of them, and they just been to church. And the only recreation they get all week is for an hour or two after church on Sunday night, that they can meet with other people. But for the rest, they said the situation is very grim. And we know with the World Cup, Football World Cup, the people building the stadia were actually worked in the heat, and many of them actually died. So there's an indifference, not to say absolute outright cruelty, towards workers in the Arab world.
Yeah, it's definitely not a simple and binary system, and we have lots to work out still about the way that our continent is interacting with the rest of the world. And I think Africa is still, we've got some way to go to assert ourselves in some respects, even if it is, and I know Jack he's trying to bait me into having an argument with you about multilateralism, but we won't do that today. We will not. I resolutely refuse to get into an argument with JJ Cornish. Enjoy your time in the...
Thank you. I can't see Jack's forearms, but I'd challenge him to an arm wrestle. But, if you just, I don't know, does he have tattoos, or does he have spelling errors on his tattoos?
No, not at all. I'm just, well, you know what, as an olive branch, JJ, just so you know, I'm small enough to fit in your carry-on. So the next time you travel somewhere and you want to educate me even further, just give me a shout.
Just be careful they don't think that he's trafficking you as a son.
Yeah.
All you don't want that. JJ Cornish, enjoy your time with your daughter and grandchildren, and we will speak to you in another 2 weeks' time on Africanalysis. Thank you very much.
Looking forward to it. All the best.
Very good. Thank you, JJ. All right, so much more to get to, but that, of course, is Africanalysis, brought to you by the Johannesburg Business School, and we will have more from JJ Cornish in a couple of days' time.
Yep.
Coming up, Democracy 101. and we get to grips with the questions of what our roles are in terms of responsibilities and rights in a democratic society. What should we be doing as ordinary citizens?
Yep.
These are the questions that maybe you aren't in a hurry to answer because it means you're going to have to do some of the work.
Yeah.
And to help us figure this out, none other than our own wise elder, Muzi Kuzwayo, will be joining us. Stick around. That and a whole lot more on the way. CliffCentral.com. It is Tuesday, the 19th of March.
This week on the Auto Trader podcast.
And I picked up an article that I read, which I only read it because I saw a video on YouTube.
Okay.
But the article was speaking to the fact that the EV hype may be dying.
Yeah.
We're definitely seeing some trends in South Africa. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, sales are still doubling.
Yeah.
But that rate is slowly coming down. So we're still buying more than the previous year.
Mm-hmm.
But the speed in which we're doing so seems to be slowing down.
Catch us every Monday at 9 a.m. on YouTube and on autotrader.co.za.
If I could ever give you more, then of that I would be sure. But if that's what you're asking for, the things you always give to me are only real in people's strings. But if that's what you have in store, then I would love you more. Because I would love if the stars fall down, I would feel much better with you. And if the sky falls down, I would feel much better with you. I sent you out a postcard weeks ago, sealed it with a kiss too far to blow, crossing up my heart that you know, fingers and toes. Kisses from the postcard flutter off, take to the clouds and touch the sky. A motor like the mind of a butterfly. Don't pass me by, don't pass me by. If the stars fall down, I feel much better with you. And if the sky falls down, I would feel much better with you. If the stars fall down, I would feel much better with you. And if the sky falls down, I would feel much.
It's Tuesday morning, time for a little Democracy 101. Jack Motlanthe is here, and we
Yes,
also
sir.
have our own resident wise elder. I hope you don't mind that.
The beard is gray. So
Well, Muzi, this is where we know that these things, you earn the gray beard.
I guess so. Hey,
Gandalf the Grey. Muzi Kuzwayo is our guest today. He is no stranger to the platform, and he has been on the show a number of times. We've spoken to Muzi most recently about his book, South Africa's Promise. And there's so much in there that we're going to unpack during the course of Democracy 101. But you've also got some other thoughts you want to throw in. And because the point of this show is for all of us in this country to come to grips with our responsibilities, for us to figure out what democracy actually means to us, to figure out what our role is in creating and crafting our own future. And that's a wide array of subject matter. It's not something you can just zone in on in an hour and tick all the boxes. So we are coming up to, and we say this every time because I think it's worth restating the obvious, one of our most important elections in any number of the last couple of years. And all of them are important. I don't want to get into the trap of doing what America does. This is the most crucial election of, and then they said that in 2016, they said it in 2020, they're saying it again this year. America likes a bit of drama, but I think in South Africa, this is probably the most important one because it's a massive mark. It's a what do you call those things? Like the marker on the road that
Milestone.
Jesus, blank on this milestone. 30 years into democracy, and a lot of changes in the air, and there are plenty of new parties that are raising their heads over the parapet wall that talks about what's happening to the ANC, what the opposition aren't getting right. There's so much to talk about. Where do you think we should start?
You know, is it a milestone? I think only history will tell that. We're too close to it to see. I think about how we talk about the left and the right when we talk about politics. Something that happened in 1789 or something like that.
French Revolution.
French Revolution. That's where it came from, and how people sat in Parliament thereafter. Do they think that it was a milestone? There have been so many other revolutions, but it has been, and it changed history to a large extent. You know, so we should do what we're supposed to do, just like the ants in a row, going to get one thing at the end of the table. Excuse me, to another end of the table. I always think our job is what it's the preamble of the Constitution says, to improve the quality of life of all citizens and free the potential of every person. That is what is to use what people call Kissingerian the reason for existence. That's what our country is about. It's about freedom, and for you for Jack, young as you are, to explore your full potential and do things.
Are we doing okay at that? Because a lot of young people are feeling very left out of the system, and if that is our point, and I don't think that that's a bad purpose.
Yeah.
If that's the point of a country, is to grant people the freedom to make their own way. To find and purchase their part of the future. Then how are we doing? Would you rate us at average, below average, or above?
Most progress follows the hockey stick, a friend of mine always says. We start at the top and it goes down, and then we go really high, up high, you know? So there's some things that we've done well. If I look at where I started, I think I've been very lucky. I think it's been great. I saw change, you know. I think about, you know, how you've seen how toddlers, when grandparents come, and the toddlers don't know anything. So and often grandma is in front because, you know, ladies first, or dad or grandpa was locking up the car. And the toddler comes running and walks past grandma to grandpa to hug grandpa.
Yeah.
And I wonder, when I go to heaven, if I'm going to do that? I'm going to do that with my mother or with my grandmother? Who am I going to run to first? See, oh, Grand, I haven't seen you, you know, on the other side of the grave. There's a story that a friend of mine, Max, once told me, that King Sopuza called Oliver Tambo in his latter days. He said, Tambo, I'm getting ready to go to heaven. So when the ANC stalwarts ask me, how is the movement? What must I say? So, and then Oliver told him, this is what is happening, this and that and that and the other. So the same thing. I guess if I meet my grandmother and say, how was life? I'm going to say, I was very lucky because I saw change. I grew up in a mining town, and I always thought a mine dump was a mountain. And those little streams that were there, we thought were rivers. You know, the acidic, and you weren't supposed to go play there because firstly it's acidic. And then you look at where we are today. It's been such huge change.
Yeah.
I can't say anything, but I was lucky. And one thing that I've always done is I've always been the cheerleader. I was never great at sport. I never played for any team, except for one where I think I played for. We used to have a soccer team that was called Highland Sparks because our section was called Highlands. And I played in the D team, and I was the reserve. So
that's about as bad as it gets.
That's about as bad as it gets.
But you make a very good point. we don't take stock of how far we've come. We always look to what's next, and we always set our default according to when things get better. In other words, we automatically upgrade, and then we're no longer grateful for the 5 upgrades that came before that. We just take this as the new default.
Yeah.
So, you buy, you first get a bicycle, and you're like thrilled. You feel very lucky that you've got a bicycle.
Yeah.
Then you manage to get your first car, and it's a cheap little car. It's something that you could just afford.
Yeah.
And even though it's old and it's not the best, and it's got some paint issues, and maybe the engine isn't 100%, but you're proud of it because it's your first car.
Absolutely.
Then you upgrade that, and so on until eventually you're driving a very nice car. And then you're worried that you haven't got the best car, which is the next one. And you've forgotten how you felt when you had that bicycle or your first car. And maybe in South Africa, we also need to just learn to take stock and be grateful for where we've come from, because we have done incredible things in 30 years.
Absolutely. I was thinking about the song we used to sing. A friend of mine, Sam, and I, Sam used to love the song. And it goes, Nansi melo yelo ma we ma we Nansi melo yelo ma we ma. And then the line that would say, Mom, I'm going to die in prison. And we believe that, we're going to die in prison. And then Sam had this line that everybody used to hate that said, Mama Enzo Munye, Mom, make another baby. Stop your nonsense.
So we did an interesting...
And look at where we are. And also, Gareth, I think of our national anthem. It's not what it used to be or what we hoped it was going to be. I mean, I used to hate the stem. And I'm glad they took out the line that says, ons sal lewe en ons sterwe, something like that. O Suid-Afrika, lieve, and something like that, right?
Ons sal lewe, ons sal sterwe.
We will live and we will die for you. And that flag would be flying on SABC
at midnight.
I get so angry. So angry. And then, we had, when it was still banned, Nkosi Sikelel Africa, and it had the 3, obviously, Nkosi Sikelel Africa was different in different provinces slightly, Like, Nkosi Sikelel. It was a protest song in that.
I heard the full Zulu version. Last year. It was last year in April. I was in Guamash.
Is that right? Yes.
And they sang the proper one.
Well, they're all proper. But
I remembered it because that's the way I learned it.
Is that right? Yeah. So for instance, now it says, which is what it's how it's always been sung in the Eastern Cape, and actually as a hymn. Nkosi Sikelel Africa, malupakanyisu pondolwayo. We used to say, so the B's and the D's, you know what I mean? You would feel them, And then, but you know what I mean? It was like, but the really great part, which is the one that's gone. That's a problem with the anthem that's written by a committee.
Yes.
And they'd go, when everybody, and then, when it goes, Morena Bulu, Kasi Chaba Sesa Yesu, it will be the girls who normally say, more, and then the boys would go, oh, Sibulu, okay, oh, and then, and then the last part, the one that's gone, that I think has made us poorer, is the part that says, that time, once you finish that, you're looking for the police. You're looking for the police.
It was a war cry.
It was a war cry.
It's kind of been a little watered down, huh?
It's been watered down. It's been.
But that happens when you have a country that you're trying to calm down rather than to hype up.
But that's where the magic is. That you're able to calm people down. And that's the magic, I think, of South Africa, being peacemakers. We've lost that, and I think, but it's a hockey stick. We're going to go up again.
I spent some time with Muzi and Pumi in Soweto on Thursday last week. And I've been before, and so I'm not a tourist.
Yeah.
And I kind of I've been a couple of times, so it's really not. It's not to me what it would be to a foreigner. We joked. I said to Pumi, "What are all those whites doing there?" When we came to the Hector Peterson Memorial, and our guest, who is not used to people talking like that, was kind of shocked by this, you know. And he was asking questions about, like, are there whites who live in Soweto? You know, because you showed us the white part of Soweto, where the guys who worked in the power plant near Orlando, they lived in a separate part of Soweto. And you think these things seem ridiculous now, of like the white entrance and the black entrance to the doctors or the Home Affairs office or whatever. This is in living memory for many people. Not that long ago.
Oh, absolutely. I
you
mean,
know, and we've changed a lot. There's a lot that we've just taken for granted.
Absolutely. But it's, I guess it's all in progress, and there will come a time where they say this was the last person who experienced apartheid. It's going to happen. That's how history is. Like,
It's like you see these people, the last World War I veteran.
Yeah, that's right.
There's this guy who's like in a wheelchair, and they wheel him out in front of the cenotaph, and then the next year he's gone, and that living history is gone.
Absolutely. But that's life. But that's why we built our houses with mud and grass, so that it disintegrates. You don't laden the next generations with the problems of the previous ones. And as we always say, those are matters for old people. You are a new generation. Focus on the things that make you better. That's taking the world forward.
You brought that up. So this is the last time we had you on.
Yeah.
There was huge controversy about something you said.
Yeah.
You remember it?
I don't remember.
You said we've got to wait for the old people to die out before things will change again.
I kind of agree with that sentiment a little bit. As you said, you just said it, that it's in living memory for a lot of people in this country. And I mentioned in the previous hour of the pedestal that the ANC has been put on in the minds of a lot of people who actually felt the brunt of apartheid. And as a result, I'm not sure that the people who have it as part of their living memory are so willing or open enough to even think of having a white man or woman running the country. And as a result, their voting patterns kind of follow the same arc. It will be ANC until we die, in a similar way to that song that you were singing earlier on. You know, this is, it's almost a predetermined end that a lot of people have in their minds. I'm going to live in this country that was freed by this political party called the ANC. And a lot of them had lost kids, loved ones, as part of the uprising that brought us
It's like
to the
a
freedom we
sunken
have
cost
now.
thing almost.
Yeah.
Like till Jesus comes, as Zuma said.
Yeah, politics is like that. I mean, the Democrats were in power for 60 years until Reagan broke in Congress, until Reagan broke that. Larry King believed in grants or welfare, as it's called, because his mother benefited from it until he died. So there will always be that kind of thing. I mean, the ANC has been around for more than 120 years.
Yeah.
So definitely it's a brand. It's established in people's hearts and minds. There was a lovely article I read many years ago about the church and African liberation movements. That how have the churches, the Methodist Church, that were symbols of colonialism, have outlived the resistance movements. So there are those things that are just ingrained, because if you were to cut a person up, you won't see his soul. But there is that one thing that drives human beings. It's how they feel, how they love, how they hate, how they fear. And no matter what I may see as a problem, it may not be a problem to you, because as different people, we experience different problems, we see different opportunities, and that's why people vote the way they do. And also a perspective. A friend of mine says, we all have lenses. What I was talking about Painful and the singing that I had, it's a lens that I grew up in that environment. But there's a predisposition that people have when we talk about the left and the right. And the way he puts it, he says, the people on the left always look at the world from the oppressed's point of view. So this is how they're going to react. And the people on the right look at civilization, that we get, we're looking at civilization in the world. The guys on the left believe that the world is perfectible. We can make it better. The guys on the right believe the world becomes better if we continue with civilization. So in a way, they all want the same thing, just that how they get there. The other one uses a taxi, the other one uses a bus or whatever vehicle.
It's funny, this came up in a conversation I had last week with Douglas Murray, because I said to him, there's that famous quote from Robert Kennedy.
Yeah.
Some folks see the world as it is and say, why?
Yeah.
I see the world as it is and say, why not? Why can't we? Why I can't be perfectus? Kennedys were famously kind of left of center Democrats. For some people, the sentence ends at some people see the world as it is and say why. That's you question what whether it's fair or not is part of that, but it's something that's going to happen whether you try to change it or not. This idea that things are perfectible. This links back to the question I asked at the very beginning: how are we doing? Because happiness, personal happiness for a person, comes from expectations meeting reality. Like if you have unrealistic expectations, you'll never be happy because you'll never actually reach those expectations. But you also you don't want to be so realistic that you can't dream. There's a role to play from the old left and the old right, but you're a man who believes that that's also changed. I've spoken to you about this before. The old political ideologies don't necessarily map very well onto where we are now.
No, absolutely. They're not elegant. They can't be elegantly packed, because you were talking about Douglas Murray as we were in Soweto. Douglas Murray reads James Baldwin. I don't know how many leftists have read James Baldwin. Cornel West is his friend.
Right.
So these are very left, strong black writers and thinkers. So it often is the analysts who decide to package you and say you're racist, you're this, you're bad, you're good, without knowing a whole lot of other things that make you say the one thing that you say. And because we live in a world of tweets and bite-sized chunks, they pick that and run with it. So it's that kind of thing that happens. And there's so many other things, the undercurrents that change history and the way we look at things and the way we do things. And often those are ignored. And I like to see the reason why. I like to go in deep and understand why are we where we are. So that, because I believe if we know the reason, then it makes it easier for us to move forward or to know that we're in the right place.
For whatever reason, I feel like a lot of people just aren't interested in asking those questions. There aren't too many people that ask why. I think when my mind goes back to the advent of 24-hour news channels, in my mind, I could be wrong, but once that happened, information became so easily accessible that you'd hear the news headline and the story afterwards with the anchor just saying exactly what they need to say. And that is it. Once you have that, you walk away thinking to yourself, okay, I'm well informed for the day, and you keep it moving.
And in the family, you're all watching the same TV. Now there are 5 TVs. Now everybody's got his own cell. Some people have got 2 cell phones, and they're checking everything all the time.
And there's no discussion because you watch it and then you move on to the next thing. And instead of sitting around the table together as a family and discussing it, like, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? People aren't actually unpacking and interrogating this stuff.
No.
Do you think we have too much information and not enough thinking and analysis? There's just info. It's like a blast of constant information, and we don't know how to deal with this.
There is, but also what algorithms have done is they do the thinking for us, and they've packaged this into our own little echo chambers, where we hear each other. In a way, that's also not bad, because that's always been the case. People vote in a particular way, people congregate in a particular way. But I think in the long term, as they say, the whole thing is bending over towards progress. I think there's been huge progress in South Africa. I think there've been massive challenges. And I think there's going to be some more progress. There are going to be bumps. And because we've got the highest Gini coefficient, means the difference between the haves and the have-nots is so wide. So every little gain that the have-nots have had, they treasure that. And the ones who've had stuff and lost stuff, for whatever reason, they worry too that things aren't going right, which is why the ANC keeps on winning and winning and winning. And I think the most important thing is to understand one another in the country, regardless of what politics is. That's how we make progress. That's how we move things forward.
Well, we've done something amazing, which is worthy of a little bit of analysis, thought, of kind of trying to figure where we've come from and where we're going to, and how much ground has been gained. Mm-hmm. And that is that we've created a middle class out of nowhere. There are suddenly millions of South Africans who have a very different life to the life their parents had.
Yes, Gareth. Sadly, it's halved, though.
Yeah, but for good or for bad, but we got there. I know it's halved in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
But we were on our way to make it grow and grow and grow. And we still see that there are lots of people who are better off than their parents were. But that's because their parents were so poor that coming out of the working class, the only way was up, right? What do you think those people, because those are the voters that everybody's trying to talk to.
And nobody's is talking to them in a way that touches their hearts.
So it's diminishing returns.
It's, So, I mean, I meet a lot of executives who were doing all right, they were middle class, and now they're stressed out. The economy is not performing. It's not performed for a lot of years. They had reserves, and those reserves are gone.
Yeah.
And it's the classic thing that happens before a revolution.
Mm.
But there's a book Dave Chappelle recommended, and I read it. I shouldn't have. It's called Pimp. It's probably one of the most difficult books I've ever read.
Yeah.
You read it?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's an unbelievably interesting book. And a lot of people, when you hear that a pimp wrote a book, a lot of people would shy away from it. But let me tell you something.
Fascinating.
It is one of the most fascinating things I've ever read.
I think gruesome is the correct word.
Yeah, I mean, sure. But like the fact that human psychology can be warped and twisted and turned in that kind of way kind of lets you, for me personally, it taught me how to look for the psychopath in the room.
Is it the psychopath or the survivalist? The guy is just trying to survive.
See?
Everybody's trying to survive. And because they want to live, they end up doing all these, through our lens, horrible things.
Absolutely deplorable.
So it's written by a pimp.
It's written by a former pimp. And he says something, I mean, if you think of Richard Pryor, his father ran a brothel, and these are real. These are people who we look up to. But before we leave the book, Pimp, he says, a pimp is happy when I'm sorry to use the word, when his whores are still giggling because he knows they're sleeping. And we make all jokes about all of these things that are going wrong in the country. We're still sleeping. Somebody's doing something horribly wrong, So, I mean, I struggle to finish that book, but it's so addictive too. But that's what the problem is we're giggling, but there's no food. Like they said, they accused Marie Antoinette of saying, let them eat cake. She never said that, apparently.
Yeah.
But they accused her of keeping some grain in a palace. So all of these things are happening. People are poor, and some of the people that we think are rich are probably poor as well. But we're giggling.
Like I always, whenever we have these Democracy 101 chats, I always revert back to the idea that we need to play a major part in bringing the change we want to see. I refuse to believe that even during apartheid, I'm not saying every single person was an activist.
No, absolutely. No, there were people who were saying, Nenzani, what are you doing? No, absolutely.
In fact, some people would pull you back and saying, you are going to get killed. Don't do that.
Absolutely.
Let us just, keep our heads down. Most probably they won't mess with us. Let's just, You know what I mean? But I am also of the understanding that once things started moving in somewhat of a right direction, you had a lot more support than you had detractors, right? And I would imagine, I could be wrong, I would imagine that there were a lot more people who were willing to do even the smallest thing to add on to what the freedom fighters were already doing. For argument's sake, harboring someone in a corner room somewhere when the cops would try hunt some of these people down. Like those kind of things might seem small to the everyday person, but they play a huge part in bringing about that change. So what is our responsibility in the year 2024, in the midst of all of the hashtags and all of the, oversensitivity? I'm so triggered.
And
that was trauma,
slacktivism.
and it's and all in the midst of all of that stuff. What is our part?
I think a good society is where people go to work, come back, have a drink, and watch soccer. That's a good society because everything works.
Have a drink and watch soccer.
Just whatever sport.
Yeah.
Relax, have a good life.
Yeah.
You know, the problem is we're going through a lot of things, and I think politics has become so big, and politicians have become celebrities, and very young people, young people who should be entrepreneurs, who should be working, aren't doing that because there's nothing going on. That's why we're also interested in politics. There are many facets of life and democracy. It's those things that push for democracy. It was song, it was art that pushed for the struggle, the songs that I was singing. My poor little cousin, Udovi, Vuyo. The first song he knew was Gooby, Gooby, Gooby. It was it's the first song he could sing. Gooby, 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 Shaya. He didn't even know what it meant.
Yeah.
But because he grew up in the 80s. He was born in 82, and and Lufuno, same thing. Those are the first songs that kids shouldn't be singing those songs. They should have been singing "Wake Me Up Before You Go Go," but nobody was playing that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's. I think we would have succeeded when more people are having a good time, a good life, rather than struggle. Struggle should not be something that we strive for, towards, what do you do in life? How was it when you go to heaven, when I get there? How was your life? I just struggled through it. I don't know.
Horrible.
I think that's horrible.
But there are so many people in politics who want to keep telling you that they are struggling, even if they're not. I mean, there's a lot of performative stuff going on because they think that in order to be considered a real leader and politician in South Africa, you have to have those credentials. And so you see a lot of people who have not struggled.
We don't even know
posturing.
How you don't even know the smell of tear gas.
Correct, but they're posturing.
They've never been hit by, forget a bullet, a stone. We used to have fights in the street where we divide the street into two halves. We throw stones at each other, and the worst are the swallows. Because they come in the birds, it's a game for them, and you duck, you think it's a bird, you think it's a stone, but the good rule of thumb is always duck because it could be a stone. Yeah.
But these guys are pretending. They're performing the role of a struggle hero because that's what they thought a leader should look and sound and feel like.
Yeah, it's populism, and also fake credentials, really. But I think. Our job is what the Constitution says, free the potential of each and every person. We should try and focus on that and put in people, ourselves up or put in people who will help us achieve that goal. Because when everybody rises, then the country becomes better for everyone.
Sometimes I wonder if we've over-intellectualized things. Like, when I hear some of the conversations all over the globe, in fact, when be it politics or just the living standard for a lot of people, you hear things like Marxism and lefts, what you know what I mean, right wing, right, and we have these conversations where we almost deconstruct things to the point whereby when someone who's listening to the conversation is like, my goodness, where do I even start?
That was the fall of Black consciousness. They over-intellectualized everything. Everything was just just was Marx, had to be deconstructed.
Mm-hmm.
And then when the ANC came, they came with a slogan, you know, and it was also kitchen, also kitchen, and people, you know, and these were like, Marx says this, and of course the Pan-Africanists were thugs to a large extent. Matsunya and them, they were, you know, I mean, they were. You know what killed the Pan-Africanist Congress, which is a great pity? It died from inside. They had an organization there called the Watchdogs. Now, once somebody says he's a watchdog, he means he's contributing nothing. He's watching what you're going to say, what you're going to do. You know what I mean? And they killed that thought. But also, I think the idea of Pan-Africanism is like Pan-Arabism. You know, those ideas of strong nationalism are over. Who is South African? Back then, it was it was Oliver Tambo did all he could to say it was not a black versus white struggle, and so that's how the ANC was. And Pan-Africanists moved out because of the communists came into the ANC. So, but the world is not divided like that anymore. But the parties that are running were built that way, you know. So we're expecting carts, horse-drawn carts, to run the e-race, the e-formula. It's not going to work. We need new cars, new drivers, new thinking, but the onus is on those new leaders to excite people about the new world.
Are they getting it right? South Africa, do we have a crop of young leaders who are standing up and being counted? Because we look at our politicians. When we say leaders, we often confuse politicians and leaders. They're sometimes very different things. But the crop of politicians that we have now, are these people embodying those things that you've just spoken of? Or are we still on horse carts?
It's easier, isn't it? It's easier. I mean, in Springs, in Painville, I don't think we have any horses anymore, unless I must go down actually to go check. But we had horses until very, very late. I mean, because there are people who still have those horses. So there's a problem, for instance, in Grahamstown. People had a lot of donkeys. So, and donkeys lived about 50 years, 60 years. So they've been, you find all these feral donkeys in Grahamstown. Some people held on to them, and the kids said, I don't have use for these donkeys. You know, they stopped feeding them. So there's going to be that, but the leader will come. When the time is right, the leader will appear. I believe that's what happens all the time, when the circumstances produce a leader.
My faith is not that strong, unfortunately. Like I am one of those people who I firmly believe in justice, not like justice being done, but also being seen to be done. I am such a 1+1 type of person. Like and I realize that even during apartheid, you need the conditions gave birth to the type of leaders that you and so many others ultimately become, because the situation pushed for that. However, in this day and age, a lot more people are looking at I, me, my. It's let me just make sure that this corner of the world, my little corner, works. I've got electricity, especially given the technology that we have these days. A lot of people can genuinely live off grid. You are not going to.
I think a lot of people can't live off grid. Most people, at least where I work, when we do stuff, people can't live off grid. But hey, empires have been built without electricity. It's just not. Electricity is important, but it's not the only thing in the world. There are many other things that people can do. People can focus on. They're going to change the world.
All right. So back to Jack's question then. What can we do as citizens who want to play an active role?
Yeah.
What can we do? I mean, you wrote that book a while ago, South Africa's Promise, and I think there's a lot in there that is absolutely relevant now, as relevant as the day you wrote it.
Yeah.
But what can ordinary people do? Because sometimes we feel a bit powerless. We're like, well, we see these polls come out. We see this party's getting that kind of reaction when people are asked. This party's getting that reaction. We have analysts on TV predicting things. We have intellectuals telling us what they think is going to happen.
There are political assassinations as well in the mix.
And what can we do?
Well, the first thing, we've got to go and vote. Because it's a poor yardstick, but it's the only one we've got. It's the only lever of change that we got. And you vote for the organization of the party that you feel is right for you. You know, some people that are parties they can't vote for, so they vote for what I call a voter dump, where you go, you look at the poll and say, okay, I don't want to vote for anybody else. I'll just give to these guys so they won't. But Bantu Olomisa was here last week, and he told us of what he did. I think they only have 2 seats, he said. Look, they reversed the SAA deal.
That's right.
So
it's in the news today.
You know what I mean? So there's a lot that we can do. I know it's been said many, many times before. The mosquito in the room. You know, that's something I like. I like weather channels. And there's what they call the mosquito index, to look at the mosquito activities for the night, you know, what it's going to look like. So go out and be the mosquito. You don't have to be as big as you are. You can just be very small and change things and be felt. And I think that's the most important thing. And also do, you know, I don't want to say work because there are many people who aren't working, who are out of a job, but see what else you can do. Try to do something. Crisis creates opportunity. You know, if you want to make tea, you have to boil water. If you put your hand in the boiling water, you're going to burn. But you need that heat to to make that tea become real tea or coffee or whatever. So pressure and heat are actually very good for us because they get us off our chairs to do something. We just have to refuse to be paralyzed. I met a friend yesterday. It was business has been, you know, it's been going all right. And then everybody's been talking about the change of media. Everybody's been talking about how media is dying and that and that. I said, don't listen to them. Look at what you've done. Look, just when you look at the mirror and look at and see yourself, say, hey, you're an amazing guy. Because you've done what nobody else had done before. That you're going through a tough time now doesn't mean you're useless. You know, so look at, that's why I like to look back. I like photography. So when you take photographs, after a while, you got to go back to some of your old pictures and see what you've done well, what you've done right, what you could have improved. Or sometimes just look at it and say, well, what a wonderful picture.
Perspective.
It's perspective. It's all perspective.
You know, I tell my friends all the time, we live in the era of Instagram. And what I mean by that is instant gratification. How do we combat people not reconciling the fact that more often than not, things take time to change? Like we hear or see stories of someone becoming a millionaire overnight. From the outside looking in, we assume that, oh man, they just snap their fingers and they're millionaires. And that way of thinking is more prevalent amongst people in, I would say, not my age group, but like younger a little bit, you know, the Gen Zs and whatnot. They are of the opinion that you can start something today and you'll start seeing returns tomorrow. Whereas the rest of us have the understanding that you have to put some work in order to get something out. How do we combat that way of thinking?
I think it's always been there. Phil Knight had that problem when you read his book, Shoe Dog, until the Japanese banker told him that, look, the bamboo is going to be taller tomorrow, so don't worry about it. Trees grow without making any noise. And we forget that because there's a lot of noise. And I think people who tend to focus are the ones who tend to make progress are the ones who are able to focus and not able to, they'll still hear the noise, but have the ability to ignore it. That's what makes champions, I think. To be able to say, I hear what this guy is saying, but bugger him, I'm going on with this. You may well be wrong, but fantastic. If you make it, great. If you weren't right, you had the experience. You've got the experience. And I think that's what we forget.
So there are a lot of people in South Africa who are very down on the way that the country's turned out after 30 years. And a lot of those people have a very justifiable point of view. They've been disappointed. They were promised this and they got that. But what you're saying here too is that, and I think what you're saying too, Jack, is that things take a lot of time. And sometimes you're not going to get exactly what you wanted. You have to, if you're so attached to outcomes, that when the outcome isn't exactly what you wanted, you feel like the world is against you. That's a very childish way to respond to the path of time and to perspective, as Muzi put it. Do you think we could seriously turn? I mean, there was a period in South African history, somewhere around 12 years ago, where things were really on the up and up. It felt very optimistic. It felt like there was a burgeoning country where lots of people would have opportunities, where we would be able to grow the cake and everyone would be able to eat. It really did feel that way.
Yeah.
And most people felt they could buy into that idea. And somewhere along that way, we've lost it. And we can blame the ruling party, but I feel like that's too easy.
Yeah, it's too
because
easy.
we're not taking responsibility.
Not at all.
And the world is also changing around us, and that's our context. We can't make the world conform to our purpose, which is to, grow our economy or whatever else it is, some small or large scale.
Yeah.
So where are we going to have to adjust our expectations to?
No, absolutely. There's a poem that I'd like to read by Langston Hughes. And the person who first told me about Langston Hughes was a friend of mine. Actually was my mentor, Nyakale Mokhosi. And it says, what happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun? Or fester like a sore and then run? This drew a picture for me in Painville, because kids, we used to have a lot of sores. I mean, this was medicine, or at least it didn't reach us as well in Painville. So this poem, when I first heard it, I could see those sores, especially on the legs. It says, or fester like a sore and then run. Does it stink like rotten meat, or crust and sugar over like a syrup sweet? Maybe it just sags like a heavy load. Or does it explode? So let's explode.
Yeah.
Let's explode and make this dream happen. That's my view,
I wish I wish I could feed your passion into half of the people in this country. Genuinely.
Because apathy, okay. So let's just call it what it is. One of the reasons we need to do this show, and one of the reasons we're hoping this show will have an impact, and all the people we're talking to, even with the Burning Platform that we do with the political leaders, we're hoping that people will become enthusiastic about themselves. Because there's an enormous amount of meh out there. And I don't know how to combat that.
So there's a thing about a coach, about listening to the speak of your competitors. If they say we need to raise morale, there's no morale.
Yeah.
That where they talk about it.
Yeah.
We've got to do the stuff that excites people. Let's get more musicians singing. Let's get stuff happening. Because all of those things are the things that light us up. But those are the things that make us explode. And do the things we're supposed to do, and do the things that we have to do with enthusiasm. I always say fail with enthusiasm if you have to. Just go for it. Go for it.
Yeah.
And if it's a miss, it's a big miss. But it's okay. The line between genius and madness is very, very, very thin.
Yep. In fact, you'd be called mad before you're called a genius. Miles Davis used to say it all the time, that if you're going to be, like when he'd speak to his band, he'd say, if you're going to be wrong strong, right? Go all the way. Don't do it half-assed. Right?
Also, Jack, the other thing that Miles Davis used to say is, let's write the new classics. So he did a song, Time After Time.
Yes.
And Cyndi Lauper, I think, was the song. When they asked Cyndi Lauper, years after Miles had passed, what's the best song that you've heard? He said, I must say, it's Miles Davis' rendition of Time After Time. So here's taking jazz music to play pop music.
Right.
So if we're just going to look at history, look at the rear view mirror, because it's so comfortable, we're not going to be able to explode. So it's look at the problems of today, find the leaders of today. Mamang Yofela jail is over. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
A friend of mine, France Colonier, always says, we don't go around saying, free Steenhuisen, free Steenhuisen. So our problem is not big.
Yeah.
The opposition is not in jail. You know what I mean? So there are a lot of things that we've got that we can play with that can make us achieve the goal of what the Constitution says.
Yeah.
You know?
And you know, like as a person that grew up in a multiracial society,
Mhm.
like I started school in 1995,
Mhm.
and I sat in a classroom. Noticeably, there were fewer black kids than there
Mhm.
were white kids. But by the time I got to matric, it was 50-50. Like we were all Kes boys. We didn't really look at one another. I didn't see. I know a lot of people say I don't see race, but yes, you would take note of the fact that, for argument's sake, Gareth is white. But
Well, I'll
that
tell
was
you,
not-
Jack, my two sisters are colored. We're registered colored pre-apartheid.
yeah.
So how do I see them? Do I see them as colored?
No.
I didn't. I mean, they're in my house.
Yeah.
You know, this one Ali Mazrui talks about, that Africa is what makes you black. I wrote my first book, Marketing Through Mud and Dust. One thing that tells whether a person is black or not, using that old definition, is whether you can dance or not. That's it. You find people with different
That
shapes,
leaves a lot of people out there. I've seen it.
including me. Including me. So the
So
guy
you're not
would-
black enough.
I tell you, I mean, even what's his name? What are you gonna do by standing on the wall? Because
yeah.
it rather not see me. So the worst thing, the worst insult. This was during apartheid. The worst insult was "Ujava njengomlungu."
Yeah.
You dance like a white man. That's it. You know,
It's cool in the gang.
cool in the gang. That's what
Yeah.
it was. You know, so the whole thing is, whether we like it or not, you see, there are people who profit from race. There
Yeah.
are people who profit
Mm.
from the way things are.
Mhm.
So they will insist that it exists all the time. So they have to hunt it. They have to chase it.
Okay.
So, you know, talking about things dying, I went to a funeral in Guatemala. Not my sister's, just one before that. And I think the last two people who spoke Afrikaans were very old. So when you could hear that, but it's going
Mhm.
because it was and somehow Afrikaans was the lingua franca until the government in 1976 said everybody's going to be forced to learn in Afrikaans. But everybody spoke Afrikaans. My mom and dad spoke Afrikaans, like I say, my sisters. So it's that kind of thing. It's the artists who picture a new world, who imagine a new world. We need the imagination of how things are going to be, and you can't force it, but it will gradually get there. You know. So what you experience that cares, a lot of people experienced before 1948. So it's nothing new, but it doesn't sell the narrative that gives some people the credential. Or also, they've never really experienced it.
Right.
They don't know that it's a world that once existed, that it is a world that can exist.
In other words, they only know what they know.
They only know what they know, and they make that sound like it's the only thing that actually matters.
It's that lived experience thing we were talking about.
Well, I think there's a huge difference between, and neither is necessarily completely right, and neither is completely wrong. But there's this idea you're talking about of like not being obsessed with race the whole time, because we are constantly told by the politicians we should be.
Yeah.
And then on the other side, being a race essentialist, where that is all you care about. And that's what, you know, old school right-wing racists have in common with what you see in American politics right now, that everything is down to that. So there's that side, and then there's the side of like, don't notice race at all. Somewhere in the middle, we've just got to grow up about this.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right? We've just got to grow up about it and realize, like, if it's a big thing to you, you got to spend a bit of time dealing with that, unpacking it, figuring out what your own prejudices, your own ideas of like your place in society, self-worth, and all the rest of it are. Unpack them, figure it out, because it's your journey to discover all that stuff and get better.
Yeah.
And for other people, it may not be important. And for some, it might be the most important thing. You can't tell other people what to do.
Gareth, I tell you what, I put something up on Facebook, and Nana Makanya commented on it and referred to this poem of Langston Hughes. It reminded me of Langston Hughes. But I'm going to read you another poem of his, if I can just quickly get it. And and the title of the poem is Langston Hughes is very left.
Mm.
You know, why is it not opening up? Langston Hughes. So let me just get it.
No, find it for us in the meantime. I'm just going to look at these comments quickly while you're finding it. So, Huge Reaction says, nonsense, or maybe my age is showing and I'm going deaf. I would have guessed 1995. They're talking about how old you are, Jack.
Oh, yeah. I don't look. I'm aging rather gracefully. Don't worry. But yes, it was in 1995, probably.
Can we include Pan-Africanism in the definition of racial essentialism? Well, again,
No,
we
it's
don't.
not.
But we also don't want to intellectualize this discussion too much now.
Mhm.
So
Why can't we have leaders like Muzi? Is this too much to ask? Says Azalea. See, people are saying you must stand now.
no,
for president.
in my township, they say if people ask you to be a leader, you're a sellout. But listen to this. So this is Langston Hughes,
Mhm.
extreme left. Let America be America again. Let it be dream it used to be. Let it be the pioneer on the plane, seeking a home where himself is free. America was never America to me. Let America be the dream, the dreamer's dream. Let it be the great strong land of love, where never kings connive, no tyrant scheme, that any man be crushed by one above. Then it goes on, it goes on, it goes on. I'm the poor white, fooled and pushed apart. I'm the Negro bearing slavery's scars. I'm the red man driven from the land. I'm the immigrant clutching the hope I seek, and finding only the same old stupid plan of dog eat dog, of mighty crush the weak. Goes on and 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 goes on. And then it says, we the people must redeem the land, the mines, the plants, the rivers, the mountains, and the endless plain, and all the stretch of these great green states, and make America again. Doesn't that sound like
Almost sounds like Donald Trump.
that's where Donald Reagan got it from?
Donald Reagan.
Ronald Reagan. Donald Reagan.
Say, not
Yeah.
so far, not
No,
so
no,
far.
Ronald Reagan was first.
Right.
He said,
So
make
this
America
point.
great again.
Mhm.
So yeah, these right wingers. Well,
Right.
Reagan was not actually as right as people think.
Conservatives.
He was.
Mhm.
Conservatives.
Mm.
That's right. These conservatives, they get their inspiration
Mm.
from a leftist. So that's what the world is about. Read the things that you disagree with the most.
Yeah.
Start with those.
Right.
Start with those. Then you can, because then you see the world differently. The perspective, you're changing the lens. So in 1980, when they changed the lens, Reagan's writers, they came up with a campaign that worked.
Mhm.
And Donald Trump obviously took it as well. And it worked for them.
So shall we start Make South Africa Great Again?
or maybe what we should do
Mm.
is we should go and read Onselen, was it Van Onselen, the guy who imagined apartheid.
Mhm.
I think it was Van Onselen. It was in Stellenbosch. Let's go read Van Onselen's books
Yep.
or his thinking. Problems that I can't read Afrikaans.
I'm sure there are translations now.
Probably, absolutely.
AI can do it for you.
And let's see what they, in their madness, what is there that we could take.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not saying we should go crazy,
No,
but
but learn something.
yeah, it does help to actually understand and to steel man the worst people, because it's easy for us to just vilify and make a mockery of. And I see people doing this now with politicians. You know, if you don't like the EFF, well, then Julius is just a demagogue who makes no sense at all. He's a lunatic. But when you actually take the trouble to listen to some of the things he says, and a lot of the time he's very sensible.
Mhm.
I mean, I've had him in studio here before, and I've found him to be very sensible about some things.
Mhm.
Obviously, we still disagree. That doesn't mean that either of us are idiots.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. Oh, exactly. Or once he's left, then I have to change my mind because I've met him. No, it
I
doesn't.
mean, maybe people have so little faith in themselves. Maybe we're getting to something here. People have so little faith in themselves that they're terrified to hear something they might actually agree with.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it's very difficult, but it's a necessary discipline
Mm.
to sit down and listen to the other person, and not try and speak while they're talking, and listen deeply, and then make up your mind. And if you disagree, and say, I disagree with you because of 1, 2, 3, and 4,
Mm.
you know, these are the things that are important to me. Because I think in between those, the truth is somewhere in between that. I think I always say the truth is like an electron in an atom. We know it's there, but we don't know exactly where it is
Mhm.
at one particular time.
Yeah.
You know, somewhere there's certain things that are good for you and for me, And if we find the right medium, and we never know where that right medium is, we'll be able to find the
I learned a trick from Dr. Jordan Peterson. So when you're speaking with someone you disagree with, when that person speaks, in your mind or even verbally, try make that person's argument towards yourself. So if Gareth and I disagree on an idea and he's making certain points, I need to try assist him formulate his argument against mine. Because what that does is I firstly come to truly understand where Gareth is coming from. But while I'm doing that, I'm also understanding my points as well that I will raise once Gareth is done. And I don't think enough of us do that these days.
And I think maybe also, let's not assume the worst of everyone who we disagree with.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Let's actually try to picture them as being the most virtuous person we might ever have met. Even if it's just for a moment, suspend disbelief and go, what if this is the most morally good person I've ever encountered? Just for 5 minutes, I'll listen to them as if they were
absolutely
the most morally decent human being I could ever have encountered in my life. And therefore not immediately poison what they're saying with my own preconceived notions of whether they're good or bad.
You know, that's what happened. You've been running the show on having different politicians. And when I listen to the guys, a lot of them, I mean, we have certain views, and when you start to listen to what they're saying, you go, oh, wow, I never thought about that. Actually, this person has done 1, 2, 3, or 4. That's why I enjoy that show so much, that Burning Platform, as you're having different politicians.
With Bantu and, well, I mean, even Gates and McKenzie the other day.
You know, so you get to listen to what the person is really saying. Whether they mean it or not is not for me to judge. Let me listen to the words that they're saying. And maybe somehow there's always something I can hold on to. And things that I disagree with, for instance, I mean, the issue of xenophobia. That one is, a friend of mine used to say, there's a reason why, as I said, in a mine dump, we lived in a mine dump. Says, there's a reason why parents tell us there are snakes and monsters in the forest. So always know that, because we live in a world that's had has had some really bad experiences. We've had the Holocaust. And they start small. As Churchill warned, that people say things that just become fires that are so big. But if our yardstick, I know I'm picking one thing in the Constitution, if our yardstick is to free the potential of each and every person, then we can measure everything that we say. Just because you've gained something doesn't mean I've lost something. So let's find ways of making everyone gain. You know, and people came to South Africa, as I said in one book. People came to South Africa because it was a promise for everybody. It was a promise that Africa is finally turning a corner, and everyone did. It was what South Africa was what America was for many years, the land of dreams. That's why people came here. So we've got to find a way of making it work for everyone.
It's a good note to end it on.
Yep.
I think that's awesome.
Absolutely.
Mapelo says, don't disappear for so long, Malume Muzi.
Oh, Malume Muzi, thank you.
Come to the show more often. I think that's absolutely right.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Thank you for an awesome morning. And I hope you will have a great day from here on in. If you have only just come to the channel today and you are trying things out for the first time, then go along and like and subscribe. We want your support. We need your support, and we want to keep doing really, really cool stuff, bringing brilliant people like Muzi Kuzwayo in here. We will join you tomorrow, not for a live show, but there will be some interviews and some recorded stuff. There's so much material. If you haven't checked it all out, go and look at the catalog. There's so much to find that will keep you amused and entertained and informed and empowered.
Yes,
maybe
sir.
even inspired. We'll see you tomorrow. Cheers, everybody.